In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
Welcome back to another edition of the Daily Memphian's Memphis Grizzlies podcast. This is your host, Grizzlies beat writer Drew Hill, joined as always by columnist Chris Herrington. What a day it was, not just for the Grizzlies yesterday, but just a massive day for Memphis basketball in general. You captured the return of Ja Morant against the Portland Trail Blazers. I did my best to try to capture both the day for the Tigers and the Grizzlies into one. The Tigers, obviously, they upset number 2 UConn in the Maui Invitational. Just a really fun day. A good day to be talking about Memphis basketball. A good day to be talking about the Memphis Grizzlies this Tuesday. But we're a Grizzlies pod. We're not a Tigers pod, so we don't have to break down the whole Tigers game. But I just thought that
which is good because I was sleeping through pretty much all of it.
It was honestly one of the best college basketball games I've watched in a long time. I told you that before the game yesterday. Like high level guys making shots on both teams. Like some lack of execution on the Tigers' part at the end. Some crazy execution from UConn. I mean, just really fun. And
we've talked since that game, but we haven't talked since you wrote about it. When I was reading your column this morning, I was surprised to see, oh look, this is my guy Craig, high school classmate of mine, quoted in your piece.
Yeah, so now you're the second person because Tim Buckley also. Tim Buckley messaged me that I was at Rotolo's watching the game with one of his friends.
Okay,
not Craig, but yes, it was just it was a fun day, and like I went down at halftime. I got to give a little bit of credit to my basketball instincts. I watched that game and I was like, I don't think that UConn's going to run away with this in the second half. Like I felt pretty good. So I was like, I'm going to sneak down there. It's on my way to the arena. I'm going to stop into the watch party, see what happens. Cause I knew if the Tigers won, it was going to be an awesome day. I was assuming the Grizzlies were going to win.
Right.
I was assuming Ja was going to be awesome because he's almost always awesome when he comes back. And that was the correct call. So really, really great day. As far as the Grizzlies go, I think they pretty much gave you everything you could have wanted from that game. They didn't run away with it early, but in the second half, they kind of took the reins and pulled away a little bit. But just to get spectacular Ja right from the beginning was great to see.
Yeah, and it wasn't even, he had the big dunk in the second quarter, but like he had the athletic baseline layup where he went into the defender and got the hoop and harm like 1 minute into the game.
Yeah.
Like they were up 10-2, I think, within like a few minutes, and it's all the points are Ja, Jaren, and Desmond Bane. And, Taylor Jenkins said before the game, he was asked before the game by our colleague Clay Bailey whether Ja would be on a minutes restriction, and he sort of reframed it and he said, well, we'll be minutes conscious. He didn't have to, because Ja only needed 23 to put that game away. Yeah.
Ja was not highlight conscious.
Like Ja didn't need to come back. That game was done. 23 minutes. They outscored the Blazers by 22 points in Ja Morant's 23 minutes. He had 22 points and 11 assists in 23 minutes. Let's just put in work. Let's get your work done, no fooling around. A home win over Portland is no big deal.
No.
But you get Ja Morant back. Ja Morant looks great instantly. And you put Ja Morant, Desmond Bane, and Jaren Jackson on the floor. Third time this season they've started together.
Really the second, kind of.
Yes, I was going to say. Third time this season they've started together. Only the second time they've been available for an entire game. Because one of those games, Desmond Bane got injured at the start of the second half, and then you end up losing a close game. So they're 2-0 when they have their three guys as much as they want them. They will lose at some point. 2-0 is not much of a sample. I think to me, the basic belief or assertion about this team this season that I had, I think you had, I think anyone who's paid attention has, is that if they have those three guys, they're going to be really good. And the question was, how often are you going to have them? And so far, it's been not very often at all. And I think the hope everyone will have is that now changes. I'm not saying they're all three going to play every game the rest of the way, because they won't.
No.
But the frequency with which you have them together from now going forward, the hope would be it is a much higher frequency than it's been to this point this season. And if that's the case, the Grizzlies are in really good shape.
Yeah, I think we have a lot to get into today. Could be a big week for this team. I mean, the hope is that it's going to be a big week for this team. So we got to talk about the schedule. I want to talk about Santi. I mean, 17 rebounds in the game. Like there's some I don't know if there's something to it or if he just grabbed a bunch of his own misses.
I think there was some unintentional stat padding going on.
We'll get
Santi
into that.
has been rebounding well, but there was a lot of like classic Zach Randolph.
Yeah.
Oops, I missed this layup. Let me get this offensive rebound and put it back in going on.
I think overall he's been better. But so you got some storylines there. I want to talk Jaren because he just continues to be great for this team and some other things. But let's go back to Ja for just a second. I think that I didn't hear your full conversation with Jeff this morning. I'm assuming you talked about this with him because after I read your column from last night, it's interesting to think about like the style that he's playing this year and how it might be a little different. You brought up to him in the scrum that he has the highest assist rate across the NBA.
In the league. The highest of his career and the highest in the league right now.
I don't think he even realized that based on
I don't think Josh I'm looking at stats, which is fine. That's my job, not his, right? His job's been awesome at basketball, and my job's being the nerd looking at the stats. But it's per game, he's like third or fourth, but he's playing like 28 minutes. And so if you look at assist rate, it's the tops in the league among players who are actually playing, right? There's probably some dude who's played 2 minutes who has a higher one, but among real players, it's tops in the league. And I really think, and I tried to, I asked him about that. I also tried to ask him about, that being his first dunk of the year and the comments he had made 3 weeks ago after that Lakers game. 3 weeks ago, that Lakers game, the one where he got injured, he was still in the locker room talking. And somebody, it may have been you, someone brought up, that play, and he said, fouling. We're going to talk about
that.
That
was me. And the one thing that I think got lost on that a little bit was just for context. I was asking him because he had talked about before that game how where one of the areas where he's really improved in his career is that now he can watch what the other team is going to do to him defensively over the first 6 minutes of the game and come back in and be better through the rest of the game. And so I was really trying to get to that. And so I was like, what were they throwing at you that you recognized and switched up? Cause he finished, he finished that second quarter into the third quarter before he got hurt. Well, he went straight to the fouling. So, yeah.
But what he said, if you listen to what he kept saying, and I'm paraphrasing, so I don't remember the exact quote, but what he said was basically, he was sort of being flippant about it, but it's one of the things where if you listen close, like there was something real there. He said something like, I might as well start dunking again if they're not going to give me the calls, right? And that was to be a tip-off that the fact that he had 0 dunks at that point was not total happenstance. I tried to get him to talk about that last night, and he was sort of just being cool about it and wouldn't really get into it. I really think, at this point, it's just context clues. It's watching the way he plays and interpreting some of these comments, right? It's not clear. But I think there's been a decision to try to reduce the wear and tear and the injury risk by being more selective. Not to say he won't dunk, because he did last night, but being more selective about it, not just to drive straight into defense and try to hammer on guys all the time. I think he's changed his approach a little bit. I really do.
Yeah. Ja's a little bit like he's a showman.
Yeah.
He's a little bit like a heavyweight prize fighter when he gets in the locker room and the cameras are on.
Right.
He's not always going to give you the most
he's performing.
Yeah.
It's a performative environment. So not only do you have a lot of people around you with microphones, a lot of people around you with cameras. I mean, it's like, you're on stage sitting at your locker, basically.
I mean, it's part of his brand, and it's fine. Like, I don't have any problem with it because guess what? People love it.
But I would be interested to find out if I had a one-on-one with him without cameras around and I had been able to follow up. I'm interested to know what the conversation would have been. Or if I was not a reporter, we were just talking basketball and he's not on the record, what the conversation would be. Because I really do think my sense is he's deliberately changed his style a little bit.
It says a lot about him, though, that he can change his style like that and it doesn't seem to have any impact on the rate of highlights that he accumulates over the course of the
different
game.
kind of highlights. The dunks is what gets shared on the internet more, although the 360 layups,
Yeah, those were big time.
But to me, the greatest Morant stuff are the passes. Like, the vision and to be able to see the play and manipulate the play and deliver the ball the way he does, that's the stuff that I think is great.
He talked about that last night,
Yeah.
whether he liked the behind-the-back pass or the pass to Jaren.
He scoffed at the behind-the-back bounce pass for a layup. He said something like, oh, that's textbook. Me and BC got that down. He was not impressed by that.
So I think you were already off writing your column at this point by the time Jaren talked last night.
Right.
Jaren got asked about the lob to him, which was a crazy lob. He was 28, 30 feet away.
Yeah.
And
Jaren goes up with one hand. Yeah.
Yeah, and it looked like the ball was going to go over the backboard.
Right.
He threw it with some zip, and he threw it really high. I didn't think Jaren was going to get it, but he did. So Jaren got asked about if he thought that Ja was going to throw the pass. And the first part of his answer was something that was played with the guy for a long time. Ja's just a guy that's going to try stuff. He's a I'm just going to try stuff type of guy. So you kind of have to know that. But I love this part. Jaren said, I always tell Zach Edey, that thought you just had where you might think it might be kind of crazy. Yeah, that's Ja's first thought. So you should be thinking that it's going to happen. So in other words, Ja's going to go for the most crazy play, and that's going to be the first play he thinks about.
There was another game this season. I think it wasn't the Lakers game. It may have been the Milwaukee game where he had the triple-double and had all the assists, where he got asked about turnovers. And turnovers have been a problem for the Grizzlies as a team. Not a problem for Ja Morant, even though his turnovers are kind of high. Because what he said in that game, which I think is the stone cold truth and relates to the point you're making, he said, I play free. And when I play free, there are going to be turnovers. And if you extend that out, the truth is, when I play free, I will make plays that other people can't make, and we will be a better team because I'm playing with that freedom, right? And turnovers will come with that. That's not the kind of turnovers you care about, to me, if you're the Grizzlies. It's other stuff. It's not Ja Morant having 4 turnovers when he's got 11 assists, right? That's a byproduct of him playing with freedom and with creativity, which makes your whole team better.
It's hard to I guess it's not going to be pinpointed as much because the minutes haven't been that high, but he is playing at an incredible rate so far this year.
I think Ja Morant, this has gone under the radar, and maybe this will change if he, puts together a few weeks where he's on the floor every game. I think Ja Morant's total play, all things considered, on a per minute basis or whatever, is as good as it's ever been this season. And I think it's because of the passing and the defense. To me, he's passing the ball better than he ever has. And it's subtle, and you can't quite see it in the stats, but the team talks about it, and I see it watching the games. He is more focused and more attentive on defense than he's been in the past.
Oh, that is almost certain. Taylor's actually talked about it a little bit too. And I thought Ja gave a good answer. He said, I'm one of the most athletic guards in the league.
Right.
And it is such a waste if I can't use that athleticism on the defensive end. And the thing is, they can also, because they, when healthy, have Edey and Jaren in the paint, they can afford to have Ja be aggressive and try to go for some of the steals and try to use some of the athleticism to make plays. And so, I think that's been an area where he's been better for sure. And that's impressive. That's what the Grizzlies need. The Grizzlies need Ja utilizing his talents, his unique talent that he has that no one else has. It brings me back to the play he made. I don't know if it was his first game back from suspension last year, but it was against the Pelicans. Maybe it was 2 years ago, where he intercepted the pass by leaping what felt like 12 feet off the floor and stealing a ball and taking it in transition. That's the type of job that really
he's always
can
made highlight plays defensively, but I think what's different this season is that he's more solid moment to moment. The focus is more consistent there to me.
Yes. And it really helps when you've got two guys, two stars that are playing, on both ends of the floor, because Jaren has been amazing this year too.
Jared, there was one stretch, and I was watching it happen. I was like, and I thought, let me look at the play-by-play on this. And it happened to just fit like on the phone screen, so I screenshot it and put it out there. There was a stretch of 83 seconds where he made a three, he got a steal, he got a block, he got a defensive rebound, he assisted on someone's play, he got another defensive rebound, and he finished that alley-oop. And that was like 80 seconds.
Yeah. It really is different when all three of those guys are on the court together.
Yeah.
Like the energy, like no one wants to, like Taylor Jenkins, I asked him about it, before or after the game, I can't remember, but like, of course he wants his team to play with the same energy every game, like whatever. But that's not what the players said. The players all said, the energy around the team, the energy in the arena, like all of that is just different when those three guys are on the court together. And like it gave last night's game, which could have been a nothing throwaway game, probably a scheduled win for the Grizzlies.
Right.
Start of Thanksgiving on a Monday night at home. Like it gave that game pop. And I thought that, last night was one of the most fun nights of the season. And it wasn't even a game that honestly was on anybody's radar before the season began. And that's the power of having those three guys together on the court. And that was just awesome. Like I thought the atmosphere was great last night. Thanksgiving week always is,
right.
But did you think that it had a little bit more juice?
Yeah, I mean, you were sitting down low, so you're a little bit more, you can feel the mood of the arena a little bit better there than the upstairs media where I was last night. So you'd have a better sense of that than I would. But it's a good week, because you get your Wednesday night before Thanksgiving, then Friday afternoon, then Sunday afternoon. So hopefully they'll get good crowds throughout these games. It's an opportunity for people, maybe people, expats who are back visiting family, stuff like that. It's an opportunity for people to see the team who maybe don't get to a lot. And it's fortuitous that Ja Morant's return, or I thought his return was going to be a week later, right? That it came now, and you have Morant for this home stretch.
Yeah, honestly, we got to give you some credit. You asked last week on the pod.
I was ready to raise the doubtful watch.
And I believe at first I said no, and then later on I said, we're getting close. But I didn't. I've got to be honest. I didn't think it was going to.
I didn't think it was going to happen either. That was definitely a red alert moment. The doubtful upgrade for that Saturday game at Chicago.
Yeah,
that's basically a symbol of Josh playing Monday night.
You know what that confirms to me too? That the week to week designation does not require some sort of big ramp up. Like it's just like when you feel good enough, you'll play.
And there's a lot of conspiracy theorizing around Grizzlies injury stuff, right, obviously, among fans. Any cynicism that people have about the week to week thing that's becoming common now, just dispose of that, because we've had it 3 times in a row now with Smart, Bane, and Ja, where they all come back, I think maybe a little bit quicker than maybe you would have expected.
Yeah. So that's a good sign for Edie, who is currently week to week with the ankle. All right, well, I want us to talk a little bit more about the week ahead. Feels like a good time for the Grizzlies to make a run, but first let's take a break for a message from our sponsor.
Want to make a big impact without getting lost in a big system? Join Youth Villages to be a force for families while becoming part of one. Help make positive changes on a national scale, one community at a time. It takes a family to transform lives. Start with yours. Apply now at youthvillages.org/careers.
Next up for the Grizzlies, Wednesday night game against the Detroit Pistons. Following that, you've got the afternoon game against the Pelicans, 2 teams with a losing record. Pelicans are in complete disarray right now with the injuries. And then you finish up with another team struggling to start the year, Indiana. The one that's going under the radar, the next game, it's a road game. I know it's not at home. December 3rd against the Mavericks. And Luka's not healthy right now. He's got a wrist. So I don't know. This feels like a big opportunity for the Grizzlies to make a run. From the conversations I had at shoot around on Monday morning, they weren't really hiding that or running from that and doing the one game at a time thing. Marcus Smart, Ja Morant, even Taylor Jenkins kind of all acknowledged, all right, this is a big week for us. This is a chance for us to push ourselves over 500 but by a decent margin and kind of take control of the season.
And Josh said that after the game. That was when he wrapped up his meet. He was like, someone asked him about that, if this schedule you guys are going to run. He said, that's the goal. Did you hear what he said goofing about it afterwards?
No.
The schedule? I'm going to paraphrase. I'm not going to use the exact language. I'm going to get close. He was just walking away, and he was like just musing to himself. He said, we're playing a bunch of MFers with P in their names this week. Portland, Pistons, Pacers, Pelicans. I thought that should be like an NBA promotional thing. Adam Silver should get on that. MFers with P in their name week.
That's funny. I didn't even think about that. That's
Yeah.
right. It's P week.
P week.
It's P week for the Memphis Grizzlies.
The Pelicans did get C.J. McCollum back this week.
Noted Grizz killer.
Noted Grizz killer C.J. McCollum. So there is that.
You know what? We
I don't
didn't
know.
talk.
Zion may never play. I don't know what's up with that.
I have no idea. We never talked about this, but like coming back from my that road trip in Brooklyn, I was curious. Like, I don't know who's the worst of the Grizz killers. Is it Schroeder? Is it McCollum? I'm trying to think of who the other one.
Reggie Jackson had a run.
Markkinen, Lauren
back in the
Markkinen's
day.
had a couple big games.
An OG Grizz killer, this goes way back, is Eric Dampier.
Okay.
Because he used to just manhandle Pau Gasol every time they would meet.
I'm trying to think. We're missing a super obvious one.
I mean, I feel like C.J. McCollum's hard to top because not only did, I don't know whether this is still true, but it was true for a while. Kevin Martin's a famous one in the past, but it was true for a while that C.J. McCollum's like career high scoring average against other teams was against the Grizzlies. And also, like, he literally took out Mike Conley. He broke Mike Conley's face in a playoff series.
I'm as we're talking, I'm searching to see if CJ McCollum averages the most points against the Grizzlies. But yeah, I mean, it does feel like that these are all three games that the Grizzlies could win.
Oh, they'll be favored. I mean, odds are you're going to lose a game, right? That Portland team, the Grizzlies just beat up on. They won at Houston last week, right? You know, the Nets won at Golden State last night. And so odds are you lose one of these and maybe you go 3-1, which I would take. But like, why not buck the odds and just win them all? You know, why not do it?
Yeah. Well, if they do that, it will put them in position like, you know, when they dropped, what were they, 8-7 after 15 games? Yeah.
Sounds right.
When they dropped to 8-7, I went back and looked at what they had done in their previous 50-win seasons, and they weren't much better than that,
right,
or the same in both of those years. And then eventually they hit that, you know, that 11-game win streak. I think they had like an 8 or 9-game win streak in December, one of the seasons just before that. And then you look at the Grizzlies' schedule this season and what's to come. And it's not to say that they don't have some opportunities where the schedule might open up, and you never know in the NBA, like guys get hurt and games may not be what you thought they were coming into the season. But outside of a game against the Celtics, this really felt like, all right, if they're going to go on 8, 9, 10 wins in a row, it feels like that moment is right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. This is the moment to stack wins. You got Ja back. You got this stretch of the schedule. I mean, it is definitely a moment to stack wins. And I just look at it and say, you know, they've now had 2 full games with their top 3 players. They're tied with the Lakers in the standings. The Lakers, I'll return it the other way, the way I wrote about it this week. Before last night, the Grizzlies had missed 18 total games among Ja Morant, Jaren Jackson, Desmond Bane. 18 games lost among their top 3. The Lakers have 1 among their top 3 players. 1 all season. LeBron James played every game. Anthony Davis played every game but 1. Austin Reeves has played every game. And they're tied with the Grizzlies in the standings. And the Rockets have missed 1 game among their top 3 guys. Minnesota's missed 0, unless you want to call Mike Conley a top 3 player, which he's not anymore. I just think the Grizzlies are in great shape.
Yeah, no, I think that it's looking good. Like the if you track like the playoff predictive numbers at like teamrankings.com, like it's, you know, up in the 60s and 70s all season long so far to finish inside that top 6. Like I do think that they've been in pretty good shape. Speaking of being,
to your point, I would look at it now. To your point, the December schedule is actually pretty light. There is at Boston, and then at the like post Christmas, you hit a road trip, right?
Right.
OKC, Phoenix, Sacramento, Golden State. But up until that end of December road trip, it's not that bad.
I want to say going into I don't remember if it was going into the Chicago game or going into last night. I think it was going into the Chicago game. If you went and looked at the rest of the schedule, like they had 16 games or something before the start of the new year, and 10 of them were against teams that you wouldn't think would be like a competitive playoff team or like really in the conversation there. Like you've also got a game against the Clippers mixed in there. You've got like several other winnable games in addition to, you got another game against the Wizards before the start of the new year. Like December now into the end of December is like the time to get some wins if you're the Memphis Grizzlies. And then hopefully you steal a couple of the ones that are tougher games, whether that be Phoenix or, I mean, Boston's going to be really tough, but like one of those games, and you're feeling really good about yourself as you start, 2025, and try to keep everybody healthy. But as I was saying, like the Grizzlies look like they're in good shape. And speaking of being in shape, we also had Marcus Smart coming back to the court last night. He's been a topic of conversation because, well, first of all, he revealed that it was food poisoning. Now, I want to clarify here because there were a lot of guys sick in the locker room last week, and it's gone around. And like I feel like everybody that's been around or in that locker room at some point has now caught a cold. There were players with Robitussin in their locker rooms.
Not just in their locker room,
in their
like
locker,
in the city.
Like
it's just that time of year.
Yeah, it's just that time of year. But like I'm just saying, like there was something floating around. Like Jaren was stuffed up last week. Like it just was going around. Well, I mean, we thought maybe that's what Marcus Smart had. Turns out Marcus Smart had food poisoning. And probably, I mean, I've never had like a serious bout with food poisoning. I don't know if you have.
I don't think so.
But
does not sound pleasant.
You can lose a lot of weight like in a really short period of time, which does kind of explain the little bit of more of an extended absence. They even gave him a game off to get his conditioning back. And then he comes back and plays last night against Portland. I thought he played pretty well in his minutes.
He was really effective. I'm looking at it now. 19 minutes, 3 of 6 from the floor, 4 assists, 2 steals, only 1 turnover. They're plus 11. The thing about Marcus Smart is that his game has a different flow than the rest of the guys in that it doesn't really flow. It's more of a staccato, stuttering kind of thing. And so sometimes he's effective and sometimes he's not, but it doesn't look smooth.
Staccato was a pull. I mean, as somebody that was once upon a time a middle school baritone player, I know what that is.
Okay.
That probably went over a lot of people's heads.
All right.
But yes, I get what you're saying. Like even some of the passes he throws, like they just have a little bit more lob and they come down and you catch them and you stop and then you put them back up versus you finish it in style.
There was one moment in that game last night that was funny to me where it was sort of a broken play and the ball came back out to Smart and he motioned for Santi Aldama to come set a screen and Santi looked confused for a second and then came to do it. It was like suddenly the offense had stopped and it was like playground basketball and Marcus Smart's like calling for the pick. It was like, wait a minute, we don't do that. Oh, okay, I guess I'm going to do this now. They got a bucket out of it.
Yeah. Well, when he's more selective, he can be effective. Like sometimes he gets down there in the paint and he takes a wild turnaround shot. And like that's been sort of what Marcus has been over the course of his career. But the defensive numbers are still really good. And when he's selective and passing the ball well, I think he can still be a really useful player. I asked him Monday morning about coming off the bench because he's still coming off the bench. And I mean, I feel like maybe it was overblown. Like Marcus is a veteran. He started forever. He's not going to. Marcus is a competitive dude. And I think if the team is winning and performing well, he'll be happy with what his role is as long as he's playing significant minutes. I mean, it's hard to take Jalen Wells off the court right now. The guy, he's been unbelievable so far in his rookie season.
Yeah, it doesn't really feel like, maybe this will change over the course of the season. Jalen Wells is a rookie. He's been very good. Zach Edey's a rookie, high draft pick. Gigi Jackson comes back, Vince Williams. But it doesn't feel like anybody is going to see the two other starting jobs next to Ja, Jaren, Dez. It doesn't feel like anyone in this roster is going to seize those and be like, I'm doing this for 28 minutes every single night, no matter what. It just feels like the roster's too deep and that it's going to be, even if Wells and Clark start the rest of the season, you could have a lot of nights last night where Wells plays 16 minutes and Marcus Smart plays 19 and Luke Kennard plays 22. or it could go the other way. It feels like it's going to be more of a night-to-night thing, at least for a while with that.
I asked Taylor Jenkins if the 11-man rotation is the ideal rotation. Maybe that was a bit of a repeat question because I think he might have been asked that before, and he continues to like not fully commit to that idea. I don't know. You're not going to go into the playoffs playing 11 guys, are you?
I don't think so. But when you have, so like Conchar as the 15th guy, you can just not play. I think if Edey were, and Huff has been great, but if Edey were healthy, you could just not play Huff. And say he's your 5th big. We got our 4. Other than that, the other 13, now 2 of them unavailable, and Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams, that makes it easy, right, to 11. It's hard to just not play any of those guys, I think.
Is the depth such an advantage that you think that they'll just want to hold it? Or do you think that you could consolidate like at the trade deadline?
Oh, I think the trick is they're pretty close to the luxury tax, and I don't think they want to cross it. And so that makes what's already tricky that much trickier. I feel like it makes sense. I think they should be looking around for a deal, but I think it'd be hard to find.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to me because I see a lot of like trade talk already out there in the Grizzlies universe, and trade talk doesn't stop, man. Like trade talk is always happening, especially when you have a passionate fan base. But you know, you watch Golden State, and like clearly their depth is a big advantage for them. You watch Memphis, like, you know, you had Scottie Pippen score 30 points and Jalen Wells score 26 against the Bulls on Saturday. On any given night, if you're going to play at the pace and speed that they do, I think theoretically
they combine for 8 the next game. You know,
right,
yeah.
If you're going to play at the pace that you're going to play, like theoretically, you want to run everybody out there, I guess, in the first quarter. Like all 11 guys are playing in the first quarter. Figure out who's playing well and then stick with those guys the rest of the game.
Oh, I think clearly the Grizzlies' philosophy is deep rotation, relatively quick substitutions, fast pace, wear people down, win with our depth. And on nights like this game against Portland, it looks great. And then some nights it doesn't. And so I think it's one of those things where it looks great when it works and it doesn't look great when it doesn't. And I think maybe we just got to get deeper into the season to get a better evaluation on it.
Yeah. Speaking of Marcus, one more thing on Marcus before we move on. I don't think I've ever seen – I've watched a lot of NBA games, and I do see some teams like try to pay attention to what the other team is doing or calling or whatnot. I mean, Marcus – every time Chauncey Billups is calling a play or whatever, he's standing right next to him waiting for the call so he can call it out and call it out to the Grizzlies bench so they can note what it is so that they can know what's coming later in the game as Portland was making calls. Like, it is relentless, the mental game that he plays over the course of 48 minutes.
I think there are real questions about Marcus Smart's effectiveness at this stage of his career and about his fit from a basketball standpoint as this roster's evolved with the other options that they've developed. But I think a lot of people overly discount the value of his experience on a team that doesn't have a lot and that sort of veteran presence on the floor, in the locker room, just around the team. I think there's real value to that.
I do too. And you know what? He's been better in the playoffs every time in his career. Throughout his entire career, if you look at his playoff numbers versus his regular season numbers, he's a very intense guy, and I think there can be a benefit to having that. Somebody that's, you know, that competitive and has that sort of fire when you get into a playoff setting, which is frankly where the Grizzlies have come up short.
Well, especially, and like Derrick Rose wasn't going to play like basketball in the playoffs for the Grizzlies, but he was part of the team. And especially with Rose retiring to start the season, Smart's the only guy left who's like over 30 years old on the roster. It has deep playoff experience, you know?
Yeah. So we'll see what happens with him. You know, again, trades are tricky. You wonder if he would be one of the guys included in some sort of deal. I mean, Brandon Clark at this stage, like he's your starting center so far this season.
Right.
He was like another guy that people had circled. Then you got Santi on an expiring contract, and you've got Jake LaRavia on an expiring contract.
Luke Kennard.
And Luke Kennard on an expiring contract. So, they have tradable pieces. It's just
any
a matter
trade
of what they can
speculation
do.
is going to involve those 5 players. Because no one's speculating about Ja Morant, Desmond Bader, Jaren Jackson Jr. And then everyone else is like young players on great contracts. So those are guys you are not looking to trade. You might end up doing it to make a deal work, but no one's looking to trade any of those guys. So if you're going to speculate about trades, which people will always speculate about trades, to your point,
right?
It's going to be focused on those 5 players. That's just sort of the way the roster's set up.
How many more years does Marcus have on this deal?
1 more after this one, I
more
believe.
after this. I wanted to talk about Santi and the rest of the depth guys quickly before we get out of here. So Santi, career high 17 rebounds against Portland. As you mentioned, maybe a little inflated on those numbers, but the rebounding numbers are up for him this year, which is an encouraging sign because that's not really what you would talk about coming into this season. When you bring up Santi Aldama, you talk about the potential shooting leap he could make, the value he has from a versatility standpoint with the pass, dribble, shoot, ability on offense. But I think he's been a really pleasant surprise for the Grizzlies to be able to help them out on the glass. And, Jaren's rebounding the ball. He's never been a tremendous rebounder for his size, but I think he's making a notable effort this season to be better in that area as well. So I think that, especially with Edey missing games, the fact that the Grizzlies continue to crush people on the glass, to me, is maybe one of the surprises of the season.
Yeah, no, I think the team rebounding stuff and Steven Adams is sort of separate things. He was such a monster. But even setting that aside, the team rebounding stuff has tended to be better than some of the perceptions of the rebounding. Now, last season, when they literally had no center, it was a little bit... Well, last season, we throw away. It didn't exist. But like Jaren is not a good rebounder, but the concern about Jaren's rebounding is as much a box score concern as a real basketball concern because the team rebounds. And there's a setup where there was a play last night where I noticed this, where Jaren's contesting the shot, forces a guy into a tough miss, and then Brandon Clark swoops in and gets the rebound. That's sort of the dynamic. Right. Jaren contests, someone else gets the board.
I was gonna get to that. Like I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can guarantee, honestly, that Jaren has contested more shots this season than any other player on the Memphis Grizzlies. And when you're the one contesting,
right?
You're
it's
less
just part of the
likely to
dynamic. It is true he is not a skilled rebounder. He is not I don't think he's a very what's the word I'm looking for? He doesn't have that he just doesn't have that quality, right? The instinctualness of that. That's just not part of his game. But it's also the way the team is set up. It's not that important most of the time.
What do you make of the way that the rest of the team has played? I mean, we barely touched on Scotty, who had the 30 points in Chicago. We talked a little bit about Jalen Wells. It does feel like, from and you wrote about this, right, in your 10 things so far this season. The depth is interesting because it may not be as quality 1 through 5 or 6 as it was in the past, but it is, 1 through 10 stronger than it's probably ever been.
Through 15, I think. That's the real thing. Is that their 11, 12, 13, 14 guys are way better. I mean, it gives them a lot of options, a lot of mix and match quality. And I do think there's not a classic fourth best guy on a contender on this team. People thought maybe Smart would be that. He has not been that. But when you have your top 3, which they haven't had for the most part, but now they do, when you have those 3 guys, they do so much collectively that it's a lot easier to fill in around the color in the edges. And the Grizzlies have a really full crayon kit for that, right? You need some shooting, there's Luke Kennard. You need some hustle, there's Jake LaRavia. You need a big guy, there's Zach Edey. You need another ball handler, there's Scottie Pippen. They're deep with role players who can fit in around the 3 stars.
Let's put it this way. Who do we think are who's 10, 11, 12, 13 on this roster, in terms of the top players? You've got...
Well, I got to start backwards. I think Konchar's 15. I think that's pretty clear. I think Huff is 14. I think, as noisy as he's been. And then, I don't,
It's so hard.
Is it LaRavia? LaRavia's been great.
Is it LaRavia? Where does Scotty fall? Where Where's Jalen Wells?
Gigi and Vince haven't really played,
Yeah, I mean, but both have shown a lot of potential there. And so I just wonder, maybe Golden State is the only exception. I don't think there's a team in the league that wouldn't trade one of their back-end roster players for one of the Grizzlies' back-end roster players. I don't think there's a single one. And maybe even Golden State applies there. But I just think that the Grizzlies, from a depth perspective, have more quality players than I see on any team coming into FedEx Forum.
I agree. But I think having the big three is the key. To me, the depth helps you survive, but you need the big three to to help put it over the top. And so that's why I think, and I sort of said this earlier this season to somebody about all the injuries. There's always 3 or 4 guys on the injury report. Ja Morant, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson. If you have those 3, you can put 4 guys on the injury report as long as it's not those 3 guys. Because if you take this 15-man roster and you start with those 3 players, that leaves 12, right? Take whatever 6 you want. You pick the 6. I'll put them with Ja Morant, Desmond Bain, Jaren Jackson. We'll go play basketball,
Yeah. No, seriously. Well, you don't want to wipe out all the bigs or all the backcourt.
Right. But I think you could compete,
But yeah, you could be competitive.
About.
You could be competitive, that's for sure. All right, Chris. Well, it is Thanksgiving week. You're a food and culture writer as well for us. Turkey? You're a turkey guy, right? I think you wrote a story.
I have written and I have proselytized on my 6-point defense of the Thanksgiving turkey in the past. We are doing turkey this year, although I am not cooking it. My brother is cooking the turkey. One of my brother Micah, is cooking the turkey. And my wife and I are doing the dressing, collard greens, cranberries, and mashed potatoes. I'm going to be in the kitchen on Thursday.
Listen, I like turkey, and I think turkey, it's the symbol of Thanksgiving, but I'd rather be a ham guy. I like a ham better than I like a turkey.
I'm a tradition guy. I think turkey for Thanksgiving, you can always have ham at Christmas or Easter,
Do you make anything that's different that people typically don't make for Thanksgiving? Is there anything on your plate that's odd?
No, we're pretty traditional. I mean, we're trying to debate. I was thinking of doing a mac and cheese because my kids would like that, but we have another person in the family who doesn't really do dairy as much. So we may do a corn souffle or some kind of squash dish instead of a mac and cheese.
Okay. That sounds pretty good. Yeah, we do artichokes, steamed artichokes with Italian breadcrumbs stuffed in.
Okay.
And you dip them in melted butter. Very good. So that's a little different. And then I'm an apple pie guy. I like pumpkin pie as well. I typically go pumpkin pie on Thanksgiving, but dessert, what's your choice?
I'm a fan of I like a fruit pie fine, but I generally tend towards the non-fruit pies. I prefer a sweet potato to a pumpkin. I like a good pecan pie. I also like, buttermilk pie, chess pie, that kind of stuff. I think we're doing a pecan pie this year. So
I know I got a lot to be thankful for this year. I'm sure you do too.
Yep.
Grizzlies got a lot to be thankful for this year. Jaren, he listed all of the things that he's thankful for after the game last night. He has a list that he's built on his phone. Very mature. Very mature. One of which was his height. He's thankful for his height. I think all Grizzlies fans are thankful for Jaren Jackson Jr.'s height.
Right.
So it should be a fun week. It's going to be a rowdy atmosphere down at FedEx Forum. Always is Thanksgiving week. The Wednesday game, the Friday game will really get popping, I'm sure. The weekend game in the middle of the day, the only middle of the day, what is it, 2 o'clock tip, 1:30? Right. I don't know. You're going to have to go look it up. But, when they take on the Pacers, that'll have a great crowd. So, fun week ahead. Well, make sure you're going and listening to all of the Daily Memphians podcasts. As I mentioned, the Tigers got a big win. I don't know when the Tigers podcast will be back because we got Parth all the way out in Hawaii. He's having a hell of a Thanksgiving, I'm sure.
Yeah.
He's eating pineapple out there in Hawaii for Thanksgiving. But make sure you tune into that so you can catch up on all the Tiger stuff and all of our other podcasts and great work over at the Daily Memphian. That's going to do it for us this week. For Drew and for Chris, we're out of here.